Yeah. Yeah.
I want to start with something my dad said to me when I told him that I was absolutely terrified of getting divorced. He looked at me straight in the eye during a video call and said, "What exactly are you like afraid of? You've been paying the rent, you've been paying towards groceries, gas, bills all these years. It's not like this man was taking care of you through and through. And you have always taken care of yourself and you will continue to. And you've always been, financially independent. So don't be so scared." Like that was essentially the message. And I just sat there because he was right. And I had somehow not noticed that I am a whole person with my own brain. Sometimes you forget your sense of self in a marriage, and there's this enmeshment that is created in the dynamic. And that's the kind of the whole point of this video. The things I didn't notice until my marriage was over, the things I wish someone had sat me down and told me before I got married and during, to be quite honest, the worst year of my life. A little bit of background, because I think that really matters here. I grew up in India, moved to London in 2015, and then to the US in 2018. So it's been close to 9 years since I left home. In between all of that, there was, a lot of career changes, layoffs, a green card in process much later, the full immigrant experience basically. And that the sort of kind of uncertainty that pretty much became normal after a while. And I genuinely thought that I had already been through the hard parts until on my fourth wedding anniversary, this guy tells me that he wants a divorce. Anyway, so in early 2023, I did go through a divorce, and it was without question the hardest thing I have ever done. Not just emotionally, but logistically, financially, socially, all of it, all at once. And this is exactly why I take remarriage, if at all, very, very seriously. Also, I grew up in a world where divorce, especially for women, is treated like a failure. You don't leave, you adjust, you protect the marriage even when the marriage is what is hurting you and your mental health. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about is about unlearning that. Some of it I'm quite honestly still unlearning, and everything I'm about to share is coming from a place of really living this experience, right? Not from a book or a podcast, just what I went through. And if you're somewhere in the middle of this right now, I really hope that something resonates or lands for you. Okay, let's get into it. So, thing, point, tip, whatever you want to call it, number one, get aligned on real fundamentals before you commit to anyone. And I'm not talking about, oh, we both want kids eventually, or we like the same food. I mean, how does this person handle conflict? What is their relationship with money? Do they have healthy boundaries, or do they let their family walk all over their relationships? What does loyalty look like to them in practice? Where do they want to retire? Like really like strong fundamental questions. I got married at 25 to someone who was 9 years older, who I had some cultural overlap with, who I had quite a few mutual acquaintances with, very problematic acquaintances, which is something I realized much later, but oh well. And so on paper, it made a lot of sense, but the things I didn't ask or didn't press on before I got married became the things that slowly took everything apart, if that makes sense, including my mental health and theirs, I'm sure. Meaningful communication was pretty much non-existent in my marriage, and I kept thinking that, if I just tried harder, if I just explained myself a little bit better, if I earned their love somehow, that something would shift. It didn't, because that was the dynamic that we had built from the get-go, and I had confused kind of familiar with compatible. There was so much love bombing at the beginning of the relationship, a whole year before we got married, and none of that grandiosity or big promises of a loving future really carried into the marriage at all. In fact, I was almost always chasing and heaving from the chase. I was, it was almost like a classic kind of discard after getting what you wanted, and that really kills attraction for women, me personally at least. So ask the hard questions early, before you even get married, before you're in too deep to hear answers clearly or are only listening to things from the filter of your wounds. Because once you reach kind of the divorce stage, it just gets really yucky. But that's not to say that you won't survive it. You absolutely will. I promise you that. Okay, so thing number two, which is understand your attachment style and theirs. It's not always easy to understand other people's attachment styles. They should communicate it to you. I was anxiously attached completely, and this very isolating marriage, kind of filled with silent treatment and stonewalling, only made it worse. I didn't have language for it at the time, but looking back, I was someone who needed reassurance, who felt abandoned by silence, which is emotional abuse, by the way, who would rather have an uncomfortable conversation than be ignored or go silent for days. I just hate passive aggressiveness. And I think the guy I was married to had the opposite pattern. The more I reached out to him for answers, the further he pulled back. And that dynamic, one person chasing, one person kind of retreating, it doesn't balance out over time. It actually gets worse. The action person ends up getting far more anxious. The avoidant person gets more avoidant. And at some point, you're not even in a relationship anymore. You're just in a pattern. And it's what Dr. Sue Johnson, who's a pioneer in emotionally focused couples therapy, calls it the demon dance. So if you recognize yourself in any of this, whether you're the one chasing or you're the one retreating, that's worth understanding before you bring it into your next relationship. Not to kind of fix yourself in some intense way, but just to know yourself a little bit better, because these patterns don't change on their own. They just find new people to repeat with. Thing number 3, I feel weird saying thing, but I guess we're going with that. You should never have to beg your partner to feel loved. Listen to that on repeat. This one sounds pretty obvious when you say it out loud, but when you're inside it, it doesn't feel obvious at all. It feels like a lot like disproportionate effort, if that makes sense. Like maybe you're not trying hard enough. Maybe you're asking for too much. I want to say this as clearly as I can. If you are regularly working that hard just to feel seen by the person you're in a relationship with, that is not love. That is basically emotional labor. You are falling for these kind of bare minimum breadcrumbs that don't even lead to a loaf or anything meaningful for that matter. And you can absolutely love someone and still be deeply wrong for each other. Those two things can be true at once. You should feel safe in your relationship, not sometimes, and not only when things are good, but as an everyday baseline. And if you don't, that, my friend, is information. It's definitely not a reason to try harder. It's a reason to pay attention. Thing 4, his people are not your people. I know this one really stings because, especially if you're a people pleaser, then I'm sure that it hurts to hear. But when things really started to fall apart in my marriage, I made a big mistake. I think a lot of us make, which is I reached out to people in his world hoping that they could help, because the lines of communication had, well, first they didn't really exist, and then they had broken down so completely during this period that I genuinely couldn't figure out what was happening, and I thought maybe someone else who knew him better could bridge the gap. What I didn't fully understand is that the people around him knew a version of him that was very different from what I was experiencing at home. That's not unusual. Most of us show different sides of ourselves in different contexts, but it also meant that his circle couldn't fully see what I was seeing. And to be honest, a lot of them were also like flying monkeys, which is these people spy on you and get you to confide in them and then report back to the narcissist. Not always because they aren't good people, but because, quite frankly, they simply don't have the full picture and are too terrified to upset this other person. So find your own people, please. People who have nothing to do with your ex, no history with them, no stake in their story, and in your next relationship, keep those friendships. Have a support system that exists completely separately from your romantic relationship. And about mutual friends, I do want to say, be really honest with yourself about who they're actually showing up for. I was really disappointed by some people who sat with me on some of my worst days and still kept kind of a foot in this person's world. And that's fine, that's their prerogative, but I have no interest in that. And I don't think that you should either. The word blocking, to me, is a complete sentence. This is a spicy one, which is number 5, get a lawyer. Even if you think you don't need one, they are expensive, but there are a few lawyers out there who don't have a big retainer. You should definitely do your research. Even if the divorce is going to be amicable, uncontested, very chill, even if you're planning to keep things civil, I mean, who doesn't want to, right? Even if you think you both understand what fair looks like, having a lawyer take a peek at anything before you sign it is a very good idea. For example, during my mediation, some claims were made that I was expected to pay back basic marital expenses like medical insurance bills, like $150 a month from years of a shared life together that I genuinely hadn't anticipated being disputed because it's petty. And then so many other things kind of came up. And if I hadn't walked into that room already knowing my rights and really understanding my financial position, and the same goes for them, right? I could have agreed to things that were not accurate. And there was also some other like big hodgepodge, like financial, I don't like fraud and stuff. Like I don't really want to get into. But the point is that I knew enough to push back, only because I had done the work beforehand. So, when you're in that room, especially during mediation, you need someone whose only job is to know your rights and protect them, not a friend trying to keep the peace. You need a lawyer. Get one. And when you're at it, know your finances, know what's in every account so you can fill out your financial statements accurately, know what's coming in, what's going out, what you're entitled to, not out of bitterness, just out of self-respect, and because nobody's going to look out for you in that room the way you need to look out for yourself. Number 6, move your body even if you don't really want to. I know that is the last thing you want to hear when you get out of bed, but cortisol is a thing. When we are under this kind of stress, our body floods with it. It's essentially a fight or flight hormone, and it needs somewhere to go. Walking gives it somewhere to go. Even just around the block, even if you hate every single step of it. I lost a lot of inflammation and weight after my divorce. I reorganized my apartment to avoid rumination. I got my nails done. I got facials. I bought myself new clothes. And it's not like I was okay. I really wasn't, because I was processing so much information. But doing those things for myself reminded me that I was still in here, that I was still worth showing up for, and that mattered to me for my mental health and for my personal growth. Okay, the next one, which is number 7, therapy is not optional. I know that in a lot of South Asian households, therapy still carries this stigma, kind of this weight, that it's like something you do only when you're completely fallen apart, or something you don't really talk about even if you're kind of in it. I get it. I grew up in that setup too, although my own family has never really created shame around therapy. I ended up finding a really good therapist during my divorce because I needed somewhere to put all of that kind of grief, confusion, the anger, all the things I couldn't fully process on my own, especially when the people around me who loved me didn't fully understand what I was really going through. And I think in those situations, a therapist really gives you the tools for tackling that cognitive overload exactly. And if therapy isn't accessible to you right now, I hear that, but it is an option. Please use it. It's not a sign that you can't handle things on your own. It's just a sign that you're taking yourself seriously. And I personally find that level of self-awareness and desire to grow very attractive. Number 8, do not lower your standards because you're divorced. Funnily, I had a lot of women in India, like middle-aged women, matchmakers essentially, trying to set me up with like men so soon after my divorce, which I'm like, what the like, who does that? A lot of these men were like so shady and questionable, and these women were like treating it like they were doing me this huge favor because I was divorced now, so I should, be this person who's like grateful for whoever is available. Absolutely not. Like, I had zero interest in that framing. For me, it was actually really important that whoever I met next in life had also been through a divorce, because then they understand, really understand what it costs to build a life with someone and what it costs when things fall apart. And I think that level of maturity and understanding is not a small thing. And honestly, I don't know how the heck people remarry so quickly. Like, after my divorce, like, the guy I was married to remarried like within a year of the divorce, and that kind of like was really honestly creepy for me, because clearly these are the type of people who put no self-work into it and eventually end up finding subservient partners who won't ask of them, who won't ask too much of them, like, emotionally. Please don't do that. I remember one of my aunts said to me, like, right before my divorce, like, what do you mean, Sabrine, that you won't find love again? You never found love in the first place. Everything you described to me sounds like a solitary confinement. And I laughed because I don't think that she was wrong. So I really think that you should enjoy the in-between. And I really mean that, get your nails done, get that nice facial, reorganize your space, go for a walk. Everything you had deprived of yourself all those years, give it back to yourself, okay? Not as a consolation, but as something you owe yourself. And when you are genuinely not desperate for partnership, you stop attracting people who mirror the worst patterns of your past. That shift is very real and it takes time. And it's completely worth waiting for. I found the most incredible partner after my divorce. And when you experience healthy love, I promise you, it absolutely blows your mind. Okay, this is kind of the last one, but I didn't really know where to throw this. You might never have actually been in love, and that's okay. This one personally really stopped me, when I eventually found my person after my divorce, after I had processed all the grief. And quite frankly, you're never fully done processing the grief, depending on how severe your experience was. But I realized something very quickly, that I hadn't really experienced love in kind of the true sense. I, in fact, had experienced love in a way that, I had to be chosen, or that I had to earn love, or that, earning love takes a lot of work. And I think for me, the version of love that I experienced when I was married was based off of performing a certain way or behaving a certain way. So love was given to me almost as a reward. And if I did something that made me more happy compared to this other person, then I was considered really selfish. And so again, I had to water my needs down. Now, I'm not saying this to be dramatic. I'm saying this because, you may not have actually found very healthy love before. And so I think you kind of have to really question a lot of the childhood patterns and definitions of love that you grew with. So you end up attracting a healthy partner again. And again, that is a lot of trial and error as you put yourself back out there after the divorce. That is going to eventually happen, but you can't force those things. I do promise that this healthy love does exist, but you have to let yourself heal first and not rush it. You have to really feel the feelings, process the grief, get your life in order, and then when you're ready, you have to let yourself be surprised. Because the question I keep sitting with is, how different might everything have looked if I had known that I deserved this love from the very beginning, that I had to work so hard for in my marriage, which just felt really stressful. Anyway, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. Okay, my lovies, if any part of this felt familiar, I'm glad you found this corner of my world. I know how isolating this kind of thing can be. You're going through something enormous, and so much of it kind of happens behind the scenes, in your car, in your apartment, in the middle of a completely normal Tuesday, when it just kind of hits you again. And it can feel like nobody around you really gets it, especially if you come from a world where you were taught not to talk about your feelings. And that's why I'm here to say the things out loud that I think a lot of us are feeling and not saying. This channel in particular is for women who are somewhere in the middle of it, figuring things out, women who are rebuilding, not perfectly, not on a timeline, but just with a lot of honesty. And hopefully I'll keep showing up and sharing as much as I can, as truthfully as I can. And if this resonated with you, please stick around and subscribe if you want more of this. And if there's something specific you're going through, or something you'd want me to talk more about, please leave it in comments. I promise that I will read them. Hopefully I get a few. If you're still here at the end of the video, please stay tuned. There's more coming.